In the case of nuclear or radiological fallout, people living around potential targets such as military bases and chemical plants may be advised to evacuate.
Well, hello, Sublation Media viewers and Sublation Magazine readers and Diet Soap fans and all you crazy commies out there. Hi again, Douglas Lane, author of Bash Bash Revolution, head of Sublation Media, Jim Henson fan, and recent moviegoer. And you are?
And I'm Ashley Frawley. I am a sociologist, and I was for 10 years associate professor of sociology. Oh gosh, criminology, social policy, and sociology at Swansea University. I got the order mixed up. And I'm now visiting researcher at the University of Kent, and my new book is coming out in 2 weeks. I feel like I need to say that. It's called Significant Emotions. Get it from Bloomsbury. It's paperback, decent price. And I write for various publications, etc. And we're going to talk a little bit about an article that I wrote for Compact that came out yesterday. But before we do that, Doug, you went to the movies, and I feel like we need to detox. We need to detox.
Yeah.
Talk about movies.
I was in New York City recently, and I went out to the movies. I saw the new Nicolas Cage picture called Dream Scenario, and liked it. Fundamentally, I liked it, but I thought it deserved to be critiqued, to be examined, to be thought about, because I thought it kind of summed up something not so great about our contemporary moment. So before I launch into my review of it, I thought I would show the trailer. So here we are with the trailer. Let's see if I can.
Why does the zebra look the way it does?
So embarrassing.
Hey, focus.
Is this how it went?
No, it's different now. Oh, you've been on my mind recently.
Huh?
Because you keep popping up in my dreams. You don't do anything, you're just there.
So, this specific person, the remarkable nobody, I was looking at that experience. Do you have a picture?
Have you been dreaming about me?
Have I been dreaming about you?
Yeah. There's like 100 messages. Somebody wants to interview me.
This is strange. Maybe you should take a minute and think before you do anything drastic.
Why me? I don't know. I'm special, I guess.
How does it feel to go viral?
Who's actually had a dream about me?
You're scaring me, but I'm going to have nightmares.
I wish I was the one people were dreaming about.
Me too.
Yeah, no, it's something.
How's he dealing with all this?
We're not even the type of people that like attention, you know?
Do you think other people are seeing you naked?
Maybe thousands.
I hope I'm behaving through your dreams.
Oh, no, you're not.
So I'm finally cool, huh?
I didn't say that.
You hear that, Janet? She's saying I'm a cool dad.
I really feel like you're playing with fire here.
Dad, please help me!
I'm not actually doing anything to them.
You know, fame can come with some less desirable side effects. You should be prepared for that.
Maybe we should cool this thing off.
What? What do you mean?
It's embarrassing.
Which part?
I guess I'll see you in my dreams.
Yeah. Of course not.
All right, so that was a pretty good trailer. I want to discuss this movie. Okay, so if you followed along with the trailer, you can see that it's the story of a college professor who feels like he's mediocre. What isn't in there is that he's trying to get a friend of his from graduate school who's publishing a major paper in Nature magazine to give him credit because he had some of the ideas that they used in the paper. When he was in graduate school, he's never pursued them. He doesn't get credit in the paper in Nature magazine. And it's after this that he starts turning up in people's dreams. People he doesn't know, people he does know. And in those dreams at first, he just sort of has cameos. He doesn't do anything. He just watches or wanders through, but he's noticeable. People see him and take note of him there. And when this becomes widely known that this particular man, Paul Matthews, I think is the character's name, is turning up in other people's dreams, he goes viral. He gets some interest. People want to talk to him. You saw a clip that he gets interviewed for local television. And he gets to be a client for this digital content agency called Thoughts. And he wants them to help him publish his own book on evolutionary psychology, the same topic that was going to be in the Nature magazine. They have different ideas. They want him to start appearing in people's dreams while holding a Sprite. They have another corporate client. So, there's a negotiation there. But things take a turn for the worst because he has a opportunity that arises due to his fame and his dream appearances to have a sexual encounter, but it goes terribly wrong. After that, he no longer is a passive observer in other people's dreams, but becomes kind of a nightmare figure who goes around torturing everyone in their dreams. And due to that, he becomes a social pariah. No one wants anything to do with him. The film becomes a commentary on cancel culture because, he can't control what he's doing in his dreams. They're only dreams. It's just thoughts that he's having and other people are having with him. But he's barred from restaurants and attending his daughter's school play, and a variety of other aspects of his life fall to pieces. And it was an interesting and very funny film about the information age and the disinformation age. But what I noticed most was, as a science fiction writer, is that you had this character who had this fantastical experience, this fantastical thing happening to him, and he isn't curious to know how it is happening or what it means. If I were to suddenly start appearing in everyone's dreams around the world, I would become interested in what dreams were and and it would make me rethink what I thought reality was. I think to some degree, it would inspire me to want to understand, maybe society or the human mind, or, material reality. It might be a kind of a religious experience. None of that occurs to the character or any of the characters in the movie. They aren't interested in what's happening, but only in how they can take it and turn it to their own advantage. Right. So
can I ask,
go ahead.
Is he able to control? So I have to say, I live out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm 3 hours from the nearest movie theater. So I've been consuming as much interviews with the director and so on as I can throughout the day. So this is where my knowledge of the movie is coming. So I'm very much sort of interviewing Doug about this at the moment. So can he actually control what he's doing in people's dreams? Is he able to sort of consciously?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't decide that he's going to become like a Freddy Krueger type character in people's dreams, and he doesn't decide to be passive, and he doesn't actually have memories of being in other people's dreams.
Right,
they're not his dreams, as far as I can tell. But he does.
So
how
does I didn't quite understand the sexual encounter then? So how it was the sexual encounter in a dream, or it was he got famous and was almost able to have a sexual encounter? Is that what you meant?
He got famous, and one of the young women who've been dreaming about him has been dreaming about him in an erotic way, and so she invites him to reenact her dream. But which I knew was going to go terribly from the moment that came up as a plot point. I said, "Oh, this is going to be awful." You never try to fulfill someone's dream fantasy. It's the only place you can go is down. You're not gonna succeed, and it goes very badly. In a very embarrassing way that it was somewhat relatable as a middle-aged man. It's like, oh God. So after that humiliation, he becomes a nightmare for everyone.
Right. So can you tell me a little bit more about this character, Paul Matthews? That's his name, right? So he's got this sort of bland name. It's very sort of, it could be anyone, any. I think they even put some kind of makeup on Nicolas Cage so that he would look particularly uncharismatic. So there was no sort of sign of this even the actor that is playing him. He's supposed to be quite bland and uninteresting. And so he's a professor at a university. He wants to write a book. Is that right? And he but everyone else seems to be publishing things, but he's not.
Just one of his, yeah. I mean, actually, it's true. Everyone else seems to be publishing things, not just his friend, but yes,
And so he believes that he has something really great to offer the world, but he's not really doing it. And
well, he's a professor. He's got a PhD. Yeah. I mean, he makes a big point about that. He deserves some respect. At one point, he said,
"I don't get any respect."
When he's being asked not to attend his daughter's play in school, he asks the teacher who's asking him not to come, says, "So what kind of degree did you have to get your job?" And she says, "Well, I have an MA in education." He says, "Well, listen, I have a PhD, so why should I listen to you?" It was a great moment. Like, very small-minded person, really.
So as I was reading descriptions of this character, I wondered if the commentary about, and I could be totally off here, so correct me if I'm wrong, I wondered if the commentary about sort of cancel culture and our online world was even in the character, where I feel like there's this kind of like non-player character, the NPCs of the world who are believe that they have something really important to offer the world, but they're just passersby, and they get very annoyed by people who are in the public eye, and they think, you don't deserve that, I deserve that. But the thing is, it doesn't matter if you have a book in your head. If you're not actually writing it, you don't have a book.
Right. Well, no, so that's what you're like quoting the movie. You're like literally quoting the movie. His friend who
I could be Zizek, I'll just do reviews of books that I haven't seen.
Right.
That I haven't seen.
His friend who's publishing in Nature says to him, he says, "Listen, I've got a book on this very topic." And she says, "Really? Can I read it?" And he says, "Well, I haven't written it yet." And she said, "Well, if you haven't written it, you don't have a book." And he's very unhappy about that. But he doesn't get very reactive or angry in real life. He just passively feels put upon by pretty much everybody. But look, if the thing about it is, if there was a character who took an interest in what was happening in the world outside of themselves, if it wasn't simply a competition for recognition, some people deserving it and some people not, then I would say that he was being held up as a object of critique, like a symptom of something that people, a warning for the audience, don't be like this man. But there's no one who's not like him in the movie. They're just different ways of, some people achieve the minor fame and recognition that he's seeking because they make an effort, and some people don't. But there's nothing beyond the kind of narcissistic reward of recognition that anyone is seeking. And the agency he goes to is not a literary agency. It's a digital content agency, which I know too much about. But and it's very funny. It's like, you're so viral right now. You're the most interesting man in the world, because he's in people's dreams and everyone knows about him all of a sudden. But he's not an interesting man. He doesn't have anything of interest to say. But there are some comments throughout on that. There's a whole bit. He does a lecture about why does a zebra have stripes? It's not to blend into the environment around him, but to blend into the herd, so people don't see you, or so you're not singled out. So he gives that lecture.
What a wonderful commentary on academia, because what you actually want as an academic is for no one to notice you, because nobody's perfect, okay? And a
Mhm.
PhD doesn't mean that you're infallible, obviously. You know, when we write papers and we publish them in journals, we argue with each other, right? We point out flaws in each other's reasoning, or we build on each other's work and fill it out, right? But you don't want to stand out too much, because then everyone will hang on your every fucking mistake. And
Right.
you can't live like that. That's unbearable. Like, you know, the peer review process, I think people early in their career often really resent it, because it hurts to have somebody go through your work with a fine-tooth comb, but eventually it makes your work better because the person is doing it to help you, not to personally destroy you. But if you
Mhm.
then become an academic and you become like a pop psychologist or a pop sociologist or a popular sort of person, people will hang on your every word, but there's also a certain amount of professional jealousy as well that will get mixed up with this. And then it's not, the people will find every mistake you've ever made to destroy you. And
Mhm.
you don't want that. You don't want that. If you want a nice, easy life, like I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who we did our PhDs together. We were sitting in an airport, happened to have crossed paths, we're sitting waiting for a plane. And I said, well, what did you do with your PhD? He said, I turned it into a book. And I said, oh, congratulations. How did it do? He said, it's been pretty much ignored. And I was like, good for you. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of what you want.
Mhm.
Because now the book's on your CV. It's, you know, you teach from it. It helps you move through your career path. But you want it to be ignored because you don't want to be subject to that much scrutiny, right? It's just, you know, I did it. You know, people within my
Mhm.
field of 15 other people will read it and they will build on it. And that's it. That's all you want. Then you have a nice, easy, quiet life. And that's you just want to be a zebra. And if you wind up sort of straying from the pack, people will eat you alive.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that is definitely in this movie, and I suppose the fact that they chose a college professor as the protagonist is significant, for precisely that reason, that that's the culture of the academy now.
Well, I listened to a few interviews with the director, and he was
Mm.
saying that part of what inspired him was a few professors who were canceled and were just sort of like bewildered and like showing up on podcasts and like having no idea what the hell happened to them. And that was sort of
Mm.
the inspiration for it. And there's a part in the movie where he's like, and they're like, "Oh, we can, you know, people have kind of turned against you, but we can get you on Joe Rogan." He's like, I don't want to go on Joe
Right now,
Rogan.
right now, that was a very funny moment where he's like, I mean, he's canceled because he's going into people's dreams and murdering them and things like that, you know, and people are truly traumatized by the sight of him, and so he's like, well, we could go dark on this and get you on Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, and it's like, okay, um, uh, uh, and he apologizes online, but the apology goes terribly awry. It's very self-pitying, and yeah. So yes, as a commentary on cancel culture, I suppose it landed, but it didn't really have much to say
Mm.
about cancel culture. It was not in any way. It didn't lead. I don't think it led the audience. It didn't lead me to reconsider or think about uh, that phenomenon or what it meant. Uh,
Or it was
except for
just
me,
set in that context, right? So just
right, right.
imagining something crazy in the context of our stupid culture, which is again what the editor said. He said, I just imagined this crazy thing happening in the idiocy of our current culture and the
Right.
narcissism, I suppose, of our
So,
current
okay.
culture.
So, yes, I mean, it is worth noting that it does accurately and adequately reflect the current culture, at least certain aspects of it. But I couldn't help but compare it to other films about everyman type characters who have something extraordinary happen to them, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or
Mm.
even earlier than that, or maybe around the same time, Oh God, with John Denver. John Denver plays like a grocery clerk who God visits and tells to tell the world about his message. And the difference there is that there was the idea that an ordinary person could do extraordinary things. That being ordinary was not
Hmm.
necessarily. You know,
But this is
it didn't make
a
you into
potentially extraordinary person who does ordinary things.
right. This is well, he thinks he's extraordinary. I mean,
Mm.
I don't know if he's extraordinary or not. But the point is that the whole the idea that what makes you extraordinary is something intrinsic to you rather than something you're brought into doing in the world is, I think, the problem. And but I wanted to show, like, to contrast that to, I wanted to show a clip from Oh God and then talk about it a little bit more. So here's a clip from Oh God from 1970 something with John Denver and George Burns. George Burns playing God. Here we go.
Got to get these shoes fixed. Watch this, Your Honor. I know how hard it is in these times to have faith, but maybe if you could have the faith to start with, maybe the times would change. You could change them. Think about it. Try. And try not to hurt each other. There's been enough of that. And it really gets in the way. However hopeless, helpless, mixed up and scary it all gets, it can work. If you find it hard to believe in me, maybe it would help you to know that I believe in you. Your Honor, I rest my case.
So there's the difference, right? In the supposedly religious movie, the movie that we might think, you know, is from the it's a throwback to a more reactionary time, the 70s, you know, before we all became more enlightened, just naturally, I guess, through the passage of time. There was a movie where the God character doesn't demand faith in him so much as tries to reassure humanity that he believes in humanity. And there's this idea that people, ordinary people, have a responsibility to each other world to understand it and to make changes, that they don't have to slip into nihilism. At one point he says, you know, people had no trouble believing the devil in that Exorcist movie, that a little girl could be possessed by demons, but they have a hell of a time thinking that maybe there's a God up in heaven who was trying to look out for them. And I'm not a religious person, but I do think it's worthwhile for us as individuals and culturally to have some sense of something outside of ourselves. That's something that we're trying to aspire to or create, that can be something we share rather than a little intrinsic bit of notoriety or extraordinary aspect of our personality. It makes us viral for a moment, or makes us a good spokesperson for Sprite. So I think the movie might have been I think this movie was actually more religious than Oh God, because it took the reality of the current moment and the kind of emptiness of the nihilistic moment we're in for granted. It was exhibited but not commented upon. There was no one in the movie was alienated from this alienating world. Not even when they started going into other people's dreams. Not even when something fantastical happened. Did it puncture the kind of reality or the unreality and the narcissistic digital culture that we're in?
Okay, I'm gonna make a crazy comparison here.
Okay.
But is it anything like okay? This is like a fun version of the same critique made in American Psycho.
Oh,
it's like this the world in which nobody cares about, everyone's very self-involved. Everyone is perfectly at home in this narcissistic universe, so that a person can kill a bunch of people, and it could be a dream, it could be real. We can't really tell because oh, there's just so many Paul Allens. I don't know. Did you kill that one? I had lunch with Paul Allen twice last week or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and nobody notices because they only care about their own little universe. This is sort of the commentary.
I haven't seen American Psycho, I have to confess, so I can't make that comparison so easily. I know about it, but I've seen clips, and I've seen Huey Lewis do a parody of the clip from American Psycho, but I haven't seen the actual movie itself. But nonetheless, I definitely feel as though this movie, more than like from what I understand about American Psycho, is that it was so, because of the violence and the over the top nature of the story, it was definitely an indictment of
yes,
right.
Yeah.
And it's
Whereas
very hard to.
This is just its setting. This is just its setting. This is just the world that we live in.
Yeah, it's very hard to say. I mean, there's something kind of realistic about this and morally ambiguous about this. Like who are we? Like, his wife leaves him at the end of the movie, and is she right to leave him? Because he's become an embarrassment to the family and a pariah, and is making her life more difficult. So she leaves him. But the reason he's being, canceled isn't just. It's not his. He's not being persecuted for a good reason, really. So, wouldn't you expect some loyalty? But it's, on the other hand, he's so unlikable. So it's difficult to side with anybody in the movie, actually. It's enjoyable to watch these kind of twerps go about their lives, but and Michael Cera is particularly funny. But it didn't fill me with inspiration. Watching this movie made me a little.
So the people in the real world outside of the dream don't seem to care or have any empathy for this person and what he's going through. They turn him into a social pariah. Whereas in American Psycho, outside of the movie, in the real world, when people saw this movie, do you know what people complained about?
What? They complained about, well, feminists complained that the movie was or the book was like a manual on how to murder.
Yeah. I've read sort of scenes from the. By the way, we did a podcast about this once where I said I'm extremely squeamish and I cannot watch. Like I can only listen to movies, and even then, if there's any violence, and even then, it gives me like I have like PTSD from it. I can remember, like I was in another room while people were watching Saw, and I could hear it, and that was enough for me that I still think about it. Anyway, so, but I actually read serial killer novels sometimes. And I know it's bad for me and I don't like it at all. And yet I'm like, and then what did he do? I get drawn into and then like true crime. I'm a typical woman here. True crime novels, love them. And I don't buy them, but I find them like, yes, please. Like airport, yes, please. Hotel, oh, what did they do? Right? I think about these stories all the time. Anyways, but the thing about American Psycho is that there's this like over the top violence in the book, but also in the movie. And the thing that people were up in arms about at one point anyway, was that he made like a homophobic, there was like a homophobic moment in the movie where he goes to like kill the guy, but his intended victim mistakes it for a come on. And then there's this like awkward kind of like he's all horrified and stuff. And there's this furore about that homophobic moment. And it's like, really, in a movie that's like over the top murder and so on, and the point too of the over the top killing as well is like he kills prostitutes, for instance, or he kills this prostitute in this like chaotic way, like and that anyone should have been able to see it. He's like running naked through his complex. Anybody should have been able to see it, but nobody cared because nobody cares about a prostitute. And so it's like that kind of commentary leaked out into the real world where nobody really cared about the over-the-top violence. Like, yes, this is what we do. But don't you be homophobic.
That's interesting. When did this critique of the homophobia get launched? Was it at the time the movie originally appeared, or was it later?
one of the people who had worked on the film, who was actually a feminist and was drawn into it on the condition that it could be made into this kind of critique, made that comment that one of the things that in the film that got the most critique was the homophobic moment. And she said, oddly, the over-the-top violence didn't receive as much outrage, because also they toned it down. You know, they had they had to put in a few things, but they excised obviously an enormous amount of the violence. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, that was like 20 years ago, and there was this outrage about the homophobia. But anyways, the point that I was trying to make is that in the world of dream scenarios, you wind up with, or dream scenario, you wind up with people in the film don't care. And with American Psycho, people outside the film didn't care, except for their particular sorts of things. People in the film didn't care also. You know, that was the whole critique that was being made. And I don't know if, I mean, how did you as a viewer feel? Did you feel like an injustice for the person that was being canceled? Like, did you feel a sense of empathy?
Well, what happened to me at that point in the film was, you know, I know my suspension of disbelief failed. So I started to think about the film as a film rather than, and as a commentary rather than being identified with the character. So maybe in that way it was successful. It was kind of Brechtian, because it didn't, at that moment in those parts of the film, I was very much outside of the story of the movie. I didn't. I only thought about the character as a character in a film and what its social meaning was and things like that. So maybe, you know, maybe that's what the filmmaker intended. But the question of whether or not I definitely thought, just reflexively, of course, he's being treated unfairly, right? I mean, and there's no question about that. But on the other hand, he doesn't handle it at all well, and there's no nothing. He does not rise to the occasion in any point. He doesn't notice that he's going into other people's dreams and wonder what that means about reality and look into that, or try to get a better understanding of his own inner life or anything like that. And when he's canceled, he isn't interested in anything outside of himself. He doesn't understand it as part of some broader trend. It doesn't make him into a champion of the oppressed or a defender of free speech or anything like that. It just, he's concerned that he's being treated unfairly, and it remains at that level. And, you know, for that reason, he loses out on a variety of levels, but not entirely. You know, it's not like I don't think he even loses his job as a professor in the movie. He just sort of, he loses his marriage. I think it's the big outcome for him. So
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You go.
Well, I was going to take a turn here, so if you wanted to finish that thought.
No, I what we should do is, because I have a clip from Wednesday's interview with Arturo Di Simone on the new president of Argentina, Javier Milei, and the Peronism that preceded this moment, and the kind of the history of Argentina, which I think is really worth watching. And I wanted to show a clip from it in advance of the show. But also, you have a movie you wanted to discuss. It's not just my movie that.
Yeah. So, well, you were talking about a movie about a dream, or about dreams, and it reminded me of a movie that I presaged in a dream. that I also published an article in Compact. So these things all sort of came together because I saw over, I think in September, I saw a movie that's very old called The Fountain. And it's a bit of a polarizing kind of movie. Some people think it's very stupid, and some people think it's like the deepest thing that's ever been loosed on the earth. But I found it to be a very interesting kind of commentary on how our society understands death. And it's an interesting one because my woo side. The reason why I saw this movie is that I saw the bubble face spaceship in a dream. And I was like, someone said, I was describing this dream as you do to people who are completely uninterested. And there's, hey, that reminds you of the movie The Fountain. And I saw The Fountain. I was like, friggin' heck, I literally dreamed this movie. Anyways, that's my segue. So before we get to my thoughts about Hollywood's idea of death, for our, just to give you an uplifting kind of chat, let's have a look at what Arturo had to say about Argentina.
Okay, let's do that then. Okay, let's see. Oh, wait a second. Sorry for the delay. I wasn't quite ready. I wasn't thinking that's where you were going. Here we go. All right.
Oh, sorry.
Here we are. Say that the identity politics was catching on with the upper middle class or the middle class. How did it manage to? Why weren't the hot dog eaters the ones who, won out within within this battle? Why was identity politics the more popular position within Peronism?
It wasn't more popular, but as the Peronist mainstream, I mean, the Cristina Kirchner or Cristina Fernandez, in her presidency, she was very much persecuted. Her vice president was put in prison. She faced, she was under constant pressure from the media and from a very corrupt judicial system doing lawfare. And so I think partly it might be a choice of personal well-being or survival. Children were often threatened. And so I don't know if that's a big part of her decision to go into concessionary politics, but she began to appoint technocrats and neoliberal successors. And their way of filling the void, they want to make a radical sound, but they're choosing to embrace neoliberal managerial politics, which is unpopular. But they also want to show that they are pro-feminists, pro-trans. Wokeness in Argentina doesn't emphasize black-white relations much because we're a mixed society and we don't have an as visible Afro minority as many other countries. It's far more.
So it's around gender issues and
mostly gender
sex issues. Yeah,
mostly gender. And so what happens with Alberto Fernandez is that he had a radical discourse, but turned out to be a bit like a kind of Biden. So just as Biden had his Build Back Better, but then this mansion came along and Biden says, well, I'm paralyzed, I can do nothing now. Similarly, in Argentina, there was a very corrupt, gigantic agro-industrial firm called Vicentin, which had many factories capable of producing food that could get the population through the lockdown, which was one of the longest lockdowns in the world in Argentina, because our winter is during June and July. And so there was an agro-industrial giant which was so deeply indebted to the central bank that there was a legal precondition, a legal basis to expropriate, for the state to expropriate this agro-industrial producer in order to then feed the population, which was had been completely impoverished by years of Macri, by the largest IMF debt in the history of the nation, in the history of the world, created by Macri, by the longest lockdown in the world. It was possible to get through that emergency situation by feeding the people. And Fernandez was at first very much in favor of expropriation. But then there was some weird bureaucratic controversy because there was a provincial judge who would not approve that the government would look into the private bookkeeping of the firm, and then Fernandez threw his hands up and says, I can do nothing. And I think that was the result of a backroom deal. But then he capitulated on this economic issue of expropriating the firm, but he kept pushing for more and more identity politics. He kept changing the subject away from food security of Argentinians, inflation, whether or not we keep cooperating with the IMF if it's not working out. He kept changing the subject to identity politics, new policies for gender. So the Ministry of Gender and Diversities and Women in Argentina has, I think I'm not sure if it's 3.4% of the GDP. So people began to then become cynical towards progressivism. They began to associate progressivism and the new face of Peronism with kind of hollow identity politics. And with cancel culture and so on. And a girl from the Peronist left, Mayra Arena, who's a very popular kind of influencer on the Peronist left because she comes from a slum, but she gave a TED talk about what it means to be a poor person in Argentina. She wrote a Facebook post that was then published in a newspaper, which is a news called Infobae, and she accused the Peronist left of having capitulated on economics and become left in a moral, ideological vanguard left that's basically fiscal conservative when it comes to economics. And when she published that, the Minister of Women's Issues, Gender and Diversities, at that time, Elizabeth Gomez Alcorta, tweeted to her or retweeted that the discourse of this girl resembles Bolsonaro fascism or something. And so this kind of dynamic, which you call wokeness or political correction, has been part of the disenchantment or the alienation of the public in Argentina. And many people want the old Peronism back. And Milei, because he has the hairstyle and he has a certain style of like his hand gestures, reminds people a bit of Peronism. And even though
it's kind of 70s, kind of a 70s to me look.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. He looks like he would fit in at a disco tech. I don't know. And would be wearing gold chains or something. But yeah. So you called this, when you wrote this piece for Compact, and this was published in December of last year. So a year ago nearly now. And what you were really doing was warning the Peronists to pay heed to the need of improving ordinary people's lives. I tend to think that these kind of deflections and distractions become, into something like identity politics or cancel culture or what have you, are taken up when improving people's lives isn't easy. I mean, maybe I'm naive here, but maybe there is a desire to maintain an aristocracy in Argentina. But I tend to think that what most people would prefer is to have, maybe a stratified society, but where everyone gets basically what they need, and there's no need not to have vacations or weekends, anymore. But unless the economy demands tightening the belt and austerity reigns because of inflation or whatever the economic crisis happens to be. Do you see that? But in fact, there is a social democratic or populist solution for Argentina's economic woes that could have been implemented?
I think so. Yes, but the political leadership apparently doesn't see it that way.
Right.
But I think there's no choice. We are in deadlock because Milei is, there was a huge attempt to persuade the people that there's no other way. And all kinds of writers from the literary establishments, they spread communiques, even though they're read mostly by people who are going to vote for Sergio Massa anyway. They spread communiques saying, please choose for democracy because Milei will bring us back to a dark period of our history. And I don't think that the runoff between Massa and Milei was about democracy. I think it was about post-democracy. It was what happened in Argentina looks too much for the first time like what happens in parts of the world where the left doesn't have that political instinct and that kind of network as it does in Argentina, or as it used to.
Okay, so yeah, that was a very helpful and interesting interview and conversation with Arturo. He walked me through the history of Peronism and its complicated meaning and character. There was a commenter who I ended up putting in a timeout because he was calling everyone a fascist. That was in the comments, but who raised the question, like, is the character of Argentina fascist? And Peronism has been accused of being a fascist movement. I think, according to Arturo, it more accurately would be considered a populist movement with contradictory components, contradictory aspects. He discussed the way in which the Argentinian left was split by Peronism, and some aspects of the Marxist or socialist left, some factions aligned themselves with Peronism, some worked against it. It was a lot of intrigue, in the history. Exiles, Perón was exiled, people being exiled who were part of the Marxist left, betrayals, and it's. I would encourage people to listen in on this accounting of what's going on in Argentina that goes beyond Javier Milei, who I think that Arturo would say that while he's definitely representing a turn to the right and represents a defeat for whatever counts as the left, it's not anything new. It's not some new shocking threat that's emerged there, according to Arturo, but rather maybe just another symptom of a overall impasse, which will not be resolved by the election of Javier Milei, and will not be resolved by a Peronism, a return to Peronism that isn't transformed in some major way, and perhaps not by that route at all either. But it was an interesting conversation, I am beginning to get comfortable with conversations which don't end with a clear solution being offered, but rather just describe the history of the impasse. I feel that generally those are the more honest conversations.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the issue that we have at the moment, is that we can't see beyond the impasse. And so I don't know, we just keep delineating it, and I'm about to do that again. I'm about to sort of delineate the void that we're in. But I wanted to kind of bring this back to our discussion of films to the extent that I can. I was just sort of thinking about this whole idea of dreams and everything. And unfortunately, I was sort of zooming in and out or zoning in and out while Arturo was talking because I kept thinking about this idea of American Psycho versus this movie. I don't know why. Where it's like in American Psycho, the big hanging question was it a dream or did it all really happen? And the point is, it doesn't really matter. Like that, what in a world that's so narcissistic and so meaninglessness and so directionless, it doesn't matter what you do. Everyone, it might as well be a dream. We might as well be living in a dream. And so in dream scenario, it's like, it doesn't matter that it's a dream. It's like it doesn't matter that what he's doing is in a dream world. It still has consequences in the rest in real life, because everything that you do, ironically, has so little consequence that it might as well be sort of made up. It might as well be all in our heads. We might as well be engaging in a universe that's entirely self-contained inside of our minds. That's my kind of very, very pessimistic kind of idea of like, this is the culture that we produce in the void as well, is speaking to this sense of powerlessness politically as well, that nothing we do seems to matter. We're all just in our own little bubbles and we're trying to make a space in the void. I said, like, the best thing that you want is to be ignored. Please just leave me alone, just leave me alone and I'll go have my trad life in a village somewhere. So some people want to drop out, and it's like, no, you can't even do that. It's like nothing you do matters. And in that world, ironically, every little thing you do seems to matter, because we can't, like, that is like, your behaviors matter so much, because like that's where the hyper focus is on you people. You're bad and you're reproducing this world and we can't get out of it because of you just won't stop doing the thing that you're doing. And people are like, no, just leave me alone, because nothing big that we're doing, it seems like nothing big that we do can overcome this impasse. Does that make sense?
It does. I want to throw this comment up on the screen here. I want to throw the comment up on the screen. Theory Shot says movies and dreams are nonsense. I have to tell you. So, at the outset of this stream, you said, well, we need to detox, so we're just going to talk about movies for an episode. I don't feel as though judging movies based on their progressive character is a very worthwhile pursuit, and that it certainly isn't political to do so, right? But I tend to give myself the room to talk about cultural things and movies and books and art and so forth as symptoms of our cultural moment. That's what I try to do. I'm not sure if I succeeded in this case, but when you do that, it's that's a kind of an easy task. You start with your idea of what the cultural moment is, and then you find evidence for it in the movie, right? But what do you think, Ashley? I mean, are we wasting our time doing this kind of cultural analysis, or does
No?
it
Well, first
help?
of all, when I watch a movie or I read a book or something like that, I hunger for someone to talk to. And also, you must understand, like, I live in the middle of nowhere, as I said, and I don't even get to speak English. Do you know what I mean? Like, my day is literally, I'm very, very atomized. It's tough at the moment, which is why, like, the trolls are hitting me a little bit hard, because I wake up in the morning and I've got nobody to talk to, and I look at my phone and it's like, you bitch.
Yeah, right.
But but I could get 100 nice comments, but the only thing that I'll remember is the person who called me a whore or whatever.
God. Well, don't block that person. Don't.
I know,
don't
and I
do
had
that.
like a no block policy as well, and I've recently broken it, because I was like, if you're not like coming at me with some kind of critique based on what I've actually said, and you're just sort of straw manning or attacking me personally, I will block you for my own good, because I'm totally isolated at the moment. It sucks. So I don't want to deal with that stuff. Anyway, but I look for people to discuss things with, and I really enjoy like the commentary online that I'm sure other people are just as alienated as I am. This is the world in which we're living at the moment. And I really enjoy people's commentaries, and I every time that I consume some sort of cultural product, it sort of marinates in my brain for years and years and years as I think about what it means, and how it can help me to understand something. And I also look at movies as a window to our culture. So I think about the person who's making a claim with this film. What are they trying to kind of get us to think about, or sort of drawing on cultural resources without realizing it. And so one film that I thought was really interesting that I saw recently, as I said, because I had a dream about it. This is Ashley's woo side. Like I obviously growing up Indigenous, like dreams, I can't help but like give special significance to dreams, even if my rational side says don't. This is, I always say, in the absence of political progress, movements turn mystical. Ashley gets mystical, and it's a bad thing. It's not good, and I recognize that it's complete escapism.
I don't know. I think there's
is bad. It is really bad, and I've seen actually socialists starting to turn mystical, and I find it very interesting. Anyways, okay, so I saw this film, and I thought it was. So I'll play the trailer for you, and I think it is a very interesting commentary on how we view progress. So Hollywood, the center of progressivism, right, is trying to send us a message. And what is that message?
A special tree grows hidden. The tree of life. They say whoever drinks of its sap will live forever.
Will you deliver Spain from bondage? Take this ring. It is a symbol of your pledge to find the elixir of immortality. You shall wear it when you find Eden. And when you return, I shall be your Eve.
Is everything alright? Everything's alright. How's she doing? She had a seizure.
Wait! I'm afraid!
It's been progress at work.
My conquistador, always conquering.
We tested the substance. There's hope.
Your wife needs you.
This is a disease. And it's a cure. And I will find it. You pulled me through time. Don't worry. We're almost there.
Our bodies are prisons for our souls.
I'm not afraid anymore, Tommy.
All flesh decays. Death turns all to ash. And thus, death frees every soul.
Together we will live forever.
Okay.
Nope,
So
I got caught vaping.
Okay. So we've run out of time. Perhaps I should tell you what I think about this in the Patreon. So
Yeah,
we'll
do that.
I think,
Go
but
ahead.
just as a precursor, I think, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and this very quick article that I wrote for Compact is my first sort of stab at this. No pun intended. That I think I talked about this last week a little bit as well, or a few weeks ago, that our society is losing something that was at the heart of the idea of progressivism coming from the Enlightenment, and that was the quest to prolong life. And this has been a massive change for me recently, because not recently, but it's just the last couple of years, because I definitely, especially as a sociologist, I used to teach one class in a module about sociology of death. And I would talk about how our society has problems dealing with death, and we tend to forget that it's inevitable. And then when, you see statistics in the media that say, your likelihood of death goes up by such and such percent, and you have to laugh because your likelihood of death is 100%. But it should never happen. But I think something has changed, and I think it's been changing for a while. And there's a moment in this film where he says, he's, they portray, not even just the portrayal in the film is this like man who cannot live in the moment because he's too focused on prolonging it. And that is so much what capitalism invites us to think right now. Do not think about the future. Don't save up your happiness for the future. Live in the moment. Find happiness in the void. But that's our problem. We can't move beyond the void. And I think we're giving up. And I think that this idea of the whole message of the movie, there's all sorts of different interpretations. The whole message of the movie is like that you should give up. Anyways, I will explain that, but we need to move to the
Yeah, well, I'm not giving up. I'll tell you that right now. I'm continuing on. Let's not submit to the nihilism. But yeah, everyone should who would like to should definitely join us in the Patreon, the Parrot Room. It'll be starting in about 20 minutes. I put it scheduled for 10:20. There's a link in the description. I'll put it in the comments and pin the comment. The patrons are what allow us to continue on with the Sublation Project. It's very important. So if you like what we do, even if you think that this was a waste of time this week, if you like what we do overall, come. It was fun. Yeah, I didn't think it was a waste of time, but yeah. So join us in the Patreon. We appreciate it, and thank you all for watching. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Here we go.
In the case of nuclear or radiological